Okay. I'll stick around.
Okay,
Thank you.
we are delighted to have Fred Milligan with us. Fred is the co-facilitator of Presbyterians for Earth Care's advocacy team. Now, until a month ago, I didn't know we had Presbyterians for Earth Care, and it is because of Fred Milligan's work here in New York City that I was introduced to this whole realm of ministry within our denomination. He has been involved with concern for our earth since he was a teenager and has served God and our church in this ministry since in many different capacities, and we are glad to have him speak of what he knows and what he does. Let us welcome Fred Milligan.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you all today. And, you know, those of you who are in the back, I hope you'll come up a little closer and we can all have a little sense of community. So when I was asked to speak about this, the way I came about, you know, connecting with Miriam and Charmaine was through Jeff. I was new to the city, but I've been not new to advocacy issues and doing advocacy work throughout my ministry in various places in Chicago, where I was trained in community organizing and in various ways across in the denominational circles, helping organize an urban pastors association. And I was a good friend of someone known to all of you, Robert Brashear, Reverend Dr. Robert Brashear, who died this last year, who we remember very fondly, and was sad when that happened, that I wasn't going to be able to reconnect with him when I came to the city. But my work with Presbyterians for Earth Care organization really started back in the mid-2000s when I was on the denominational staff of the General Assembly in the area of stewardship. And so as I was looking at a kind of holistic idea of stewardship, I was really wanting to bring together stewardship of the earth as well as stewardship of finances. And I helped a group of young adults Jeff. I was helping a group of young adults who wanted to start who wanted to start an organization called Earth, Eco Steward, the Eco Stewards program, to get that started. And so we would bring a group of young adults together each year and talk to them about what their faith meant in relation to their care for creation. And that's when this program got started. And then I was on the steering committee for Presbyterians for Earth Care for many years before I went out of the country to serve a congregation in Santiago, Chile for 6 years. So that's just a little bit more about my background there. And but I'm really happy to be here now. I moved to the city last year with my partner, who is an official with the European Union at the United Nations. And so I'm able to be here and engage with earth care issues, climate change issues at the United Nations in connection with different organizations, international organizations. But what I have more and more come to realize is that our advocacy work in the church, you know, they say charity begins at home. You know, a lot of times you hear that phrase, and you know, you kind of think, oh no, you know, we really need to care about the people we don't know, right? And we should, we definitely should. But when I say that today, I'm saying what I mean by that is that our advocacy has to begin at home. 2 big polls came out just this last week around what Christians believe about climate change. And what it said was, in these polls, basically the bottom line of these polls was that the more religious people are, the more seriously they take their religious faith, the less likely they are to believe that climate change is humanly influenced, that human beings have had an impact on the climate. And so when I say, advocacy has to begin at home, this is what I mean. As much as we want to get nations to change through the United Nations and all of their processes, we really need to be looking at our own churches and the ways in which our own congregations and our own presbyteries and our own denomination is and is not taking this climate crisis seriously and the impact that human beings have on it. So there's a famous African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others. So, and there's an even closer to home font of wisdom, the famous Saul Alinsky, who wrote the important community organizing guide called Rules for Radicals. In there he says that there are two kinds of power. There's organized money and organized people. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't come from organized money. So if there is a chance, if we have any chance of making an impact on our church and on the world, then we have to start with organizing people. We have to start with talking to one another in our own congregations, in our own presbyteries, in our own denomination, about what we can do around climate change. And so I've been working a lot on that. And last year I was, I authored or kind of shepherded the development of an overture to the General Assembly. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, we have to really start our advocacy where we are, with our own families, with our own churches, with our own presbyteries, and our own denomination. Now, we've been able to have some important impacts working through denominational overture processes, and we will continue to work on those things. But one of the things that Presbyterian Earth Care has found as its really important reason for being is to help us in this process of coming together. We just had a conference 2 weeks ago, and I don't know if any of you, I know I mentioned to Miriam and Charmaine that this conference was coming up, but I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to drop in on any of those sessions, but they are all online. And if you want to go and hear them, they're incredible sessions from that conference. It was also a hybrid, just like this event today is a hybrid conference. And all those sessions are recorded and available at the presbyearthcare.org, I think is the place where you can find our website. And you can find all the webinars. We have another one coming up this week called, it's going to be a conversation. It's jointly sponsored with the Pacific School of Religion, an ethics professor there, and some other folk, a professor from Columbia Seminary in Atlanta, and some other folk to talk about this most recent statement by Pope Francis about the environment. Glory to God. It's his second big statement about the environment. And this week there's going to be a conversation, and you can just Google that statement and find that statement if you want to read it. It's very important. But what he is saying there, and what these polls are saying that just came out last week, and what I heard a lot of as I participated in events around the recent General Assembly of the UN, was that the faith community has been kind of sitting on the sidelines all these years. We are now about to have the 28th, what they call Conversation of Partners or Conference of Partners, of all of these signatories to the UN agreement around working on climate change, the 28th year is about to go, 29th, I guess, because I don't know, we got, the numbers don't actually add up correctly, but it's about 28, 29 years that we've been doing these annual conferences. And that the temperature of the earth keeps going up. We keep setting records and more records and more records and more records. And we have to do something seriously. And this is what the Pope says in his letter. He says, you know, he says, I'm pretty cynical about the possibilities, given the track record we've got so far, about these entrenched power interests around the world and in these governments. And we've got to do something really serious, and we have to do something serious very soon. We have to really do some serious cutting back, primarily cutting back in the amount of fossil fuels we're using. And that has a, what was that? Okay, somebody got it. Anyway, so let's kind of go through some of these slides I've got here. And I'm not quite sure how the slides are going to progress, but I just kind of want to talk through some of those slides with you. And oh yeah, the rationale for advocacy and action. Today we're facing human-induced changes to the global climate system that threaten all of life on the planet. And more vulnerable communities of color and poor are experiencing profound effects. You know, as we know, folks who are poor are the folks who live closest to, you know, where flooding happens because of different, you know, historic racism and various prejudices that make it possible for the poor to live, you know, in the low places where the water's going to flood. And all of these other kinds of things. And so the storms are affecting the poor more than they are affecting the wealthy. The wealthy are able to use their money to kind of insulate themselves from the consequences of climate change. But what we want to work for is a world that is more just, and so climate justice is really what we're talking about. Not only creation care that the scriptures talk to us about, but real climate justice, especially in this time of a climate crisis. So can you advance this slide? So here is from just a couple of weeks ago. You can see the smiling face of Charmaine there, along with another Presbyterian who came out with her arm in a cast. I think she's from First Presbyterian Church. And we had people from several of our congregations here in the presbytery who were at the March to End Fossil Fuels. The March to End Fossil Fuels. And we were there with about 75,000 of our friends, and it was a beautiful day. It was a great day. Here's, oh well, there's Jeff and others. And
That's
yeah,
our congregation.
And there's Miriam. So we've got lots of folks from the presbytery there.
You are.
And here I am, and this is a minister from New Jersey. No, from Hudson River. Hudson River Presbytery, up in New York. There were some people from New Jersey I didn't get a picture of, but anyway, these are some folks from First Pres there. Emily Gabe Brewer, who is the interim associate at First Pres, has been very involved with the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship. And they've had a very focused effort around fossil fuels for many years now. And so we work very, very well together with them on this effort. Can you advance the slide, please? And so I mentioned earlier that last year we authored this overture that was adopted by, I think, over 15 presbyteries, and New York City Presbytery was one of them. I worked with Bob Bashir on that, and he was able to encourage the presbytery around that. So come right in. And so this overture went from the presbytery to the General Assembly. The time is now to cherish creation, cut carbon, and speak up. And you can advance the slide, please. And here's a list of all the different overtures that were before the General Assembly last year. And I'll just read through them real quickly because it's a little small for you to see from where you're sitting. On learning about and starting the process of divestment from fossil fuels. That was, I think, from Arkansas. Investing in a green future, a vision for renewed creation from the Advisory Committee on Social Witness Policy. This is a group within the denomination that studies different social issues. And that's a very good document that I highly recommend you get a chance to read at some point. On creating a Presbyterian tree fund. Now this tree fund is an interesting thing connected to carbon offsets. How many of you know what a carbon offset is? Okay, Jeff. So the idea is that when you take a trip and you're going to spend money on a plane ticket, for instance, you can go to the Presbyterian Tree Fund website and you can purchase carbon credits, I guess it is, that help alleviate some of your guilt. but it's connected. The money that they're collecting there is then being used to plant trees. so you know that the carbon is actually being sequestered, they call it, sucked up is another way to put it, by the trees. And growing those trees sucks out a little bit of that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So the Presbyterian Tree Fund was brought to the General Assembly last year on reducing the Presbyterian carbon imprint, and basically that's looking at all the institutions, the buildings of our headquarters, all of our congregations, encouraging all churches to look at our carbon footprint, do an analysis of our building uses, expenses of gas and electricity and so forth, and looking at what that is, affirming the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Paris Agreement, basically just saying, yes, we definitely need to stay in that. As some of you know, during the last administration, the US was pulled out of that, but his very first day on the job, President Biden took us back into that agreement. And on declaring the time is now to cherish creation, and that's the one that we wrote, on actions to support an energy transition. Basically, that means a just transition so that workers in the fossil fuel industry will be helped to be retrained and find work in other industries, primarily in the industries around renewable energy. And that had a bunch of other elements to it. Then mission responsibility through investment. This is the mechanism that was developed back in the 80s during the time of apartheid in South Africa, when our denomination wanted to withhold funds from corporations that were doing business and making money out of their business in South Africa. And so we set up this organization, Mission Responsibility Through Investment, to take a close look at some of these companies, to have enough stock invested in them to be able to go to their stockholder meetings and to make protests and to encourage them and leverage our investments in those companies as a way of changing their practices. And if they wouldn't, then to take the money out, to take those stocks out. So that's the mechanism we have today. And we've gotten them, basically, I would say primarily, it was the Fossil Free PCUSA that Emily Brewer was involved with that did a lot to really push the MRTI to take a close look at these fossil fuel companies. And it may seem odd that we're encouraging a fossil fuel company to dig up more, but not to dig up their product, right? It just seems weird. And so today, they have actually came to the last General Assembly, and they recommended that we take all our money out of 5 of the biggest fossil fuel companies. And that was a huge victory. However, because of the way things are structured with our investment portfolio, some of that money, if not all of it, went back into other fossil fuel companies. Can you believe it? So this is what we have to work on now. We have to work on shifting the basic understanding of what MRTI is up to and how they go about their work, because they were established to help us to implement our values as a denomination. And today, we really need to take a strong stand about our values as a denomination on this issue of climate change. And the biggest contributor to climate change is fossil fuels. So if we're going to make that kind of a strong statement, then we need to get our money out of fossil fuels. And right now, MRTI says that's not the way we're set up to operate. And so we have to work on that. That's the next General Assembly coming up. Keep your ears open. Keep your, stay tuned. We're going to see what happens there. So on protecting the diversity of creation has to do with biodiversity. It has to do with species loss. We're currently going through what's called the second great extinction. The first great extinction was when the dinosaurs disappeared, from the earth. They were extinguished from the earth by various changes in the atmosphere and the climate. And now, because we've changed the climate so much, we are now losing incredible numbers of species of living creatures. And these are all part of the web of life, especially the creatures in the ocean, which, because the ocean is absorbing so much CO2, it's causing acidification of the water. As the water warms and acidifies, it absorbs less oxygen. So the fish and the creatures in the ocean can't breathe. And then, of course, all the runoff of the fertilizers we use on land that go down the Mississippi and out into the Gulf and in various places in our lakes inland, they create these huge, areas of overgrowth of algae that sucks up all the oxygen in the water and all these kinds of things. It creates what they call dead zones in the ocean and in lakes and so forth. So that's what that one's about. Environmental Justice Committee report. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So how are we doing on time? Help me out. Okay, so let's see. Now we need to be out of here by a quarter till. About 10 minutes. Oh, I thought we had 45 minutes.
Yeah, and 10 minutes and 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but we need to be out of here in 15 minutes, right?
No, you need to stop so that the others can go.
That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. We need to be out of this room, out of this space, so another presenter can start at 2 o'clock?
1:45.
The next presenter starts at 1:45?
Your portion ends at 1:45.
That's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. So yes, here's what was approved at the General Assembly. So investing in a green future was approved. Presbyterian Tree Fund was approved. Reducing the Presbyterian USA carbon imprint was approved. Supporting a just energy transition was approved. The MRTI report was approved that took the money out of those different fossil fuel companies, and protecting the diversity of creation was approved. And go on to the next slide. So let's just flip on through. As we go through these, you can see, and you'll be able to go back and look more carefully at this because it's going to be recorded. So just flip on through the Presbyterian Tree Fund and on to the next one, reducing Presbyterian carbon. It tells you more detail about each of those things, what was in them and how and what got approved there. And the reason I thought it was important to talk about this was to just let you know that our efforts are producing some results in terms of our advocacy, okay? Within our own family of Presbyterians, we are making some headway. It seems sometimes like we're chipping away, and it seems sometimes like it's very frustrating and we're not quite getting the radical change that's really needed, but we are making some headway. So recommendations from 4 overtures were added to the action. So this is part of the process of the overtures at the General Assembly, is that they gather up these overtures that have a similar theme, like all the environmental overtures, into one committee. And then even if something's not passed, sometimes they'll look into it and they'll say, oh, there's some good comments in there. There's some good language in there. There's some good recommendations in there. Let's take those out and put them in this other one and sort of create a new overture in a way. And so our overture, as it came, was not adopted primarily because it called for an absolute ban of all investment in fossil fuel companies. And because of that, it was not passed. But a lot of the language, a lot of the recommendations were added into this one, what was called ENV 09 as it was revised, and all of these different things got into that. So let's move on then, past this, to, so our current path gets the US to 40% a reduction in our contribution of CO2 to the atmosphere by 2030, okay? So that's where we are, and with the recent adoption of the Inflation Reduction Act, that's going to help us. But we still are short. We still need to make other changes. And a lot of those changes have to start with us, have to start at home. So let's take a few minutes for questions and a few minutes for feedback on that. Yes?
I'm so proud of the work that you guys are doing in our church in the Presbyterian because for the past year when I was working, because I'm a union rep, and we've been going to, we've been doing a lot of rallying around climate change, and also we go to Albany and Lamy also. So I'm so proud to see the work that you guys are doing, especially in the church. And we never had that in the church. I'm so proud of Miss Charmaine for the work that she's doing, and thank you for Central.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here and listening to you and the climate change.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate the support that all the unions gave to the recent march that was held. And although it was, I know it's kind of difficult sometimes because the focus of a lot of the protests was directed toward President Biden, right? Saying Biden do this, Biden do that. Okay, and it's difficult when you've got a president who has just brought to Congress the most progressive bill yet on climate change issues, then to say, well, yes, but it's not enough. And that's true, it's not enough, so we have to keep pushing. We have to keep, say it again?
It's a start.
It's a start, absolutely, it's a start.
And also, I was already last month at a conference for a week, and it was on the agenda, climate change also. We're trying to get a bill passed on climate change.
Where?
In Albany.
In Albany, oh, in Albany, yes.
It was on the agenda also.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that you're staying in touch with the local issues around those things. Yeah, so other thoughts or questions? Yes.
I have must be an obvious question. If we reduce fossil fuels, that means that we don't have available what fossil fuels provides. So what are the implications of the changes? We've talked a lot this morning about change and getting used to change. What are the changes we should be preparing or getting used to putting in practice?
Great point, great question, because it really does come down to how we get into a rut in our pattern of life, don't we?
Yeah.
How many of you have ever been out on your rounds during the day and said to yourself, oh, I need to stop by the store and get this, that, or the other. And then you get to the store, and thanks to the new legislation around, single-use plastic, you have to buy a bag. I can't tell you how many Morton Williams bags I've got at home. Because, but the good thing about those bags, they are all reusable bags, and none of them made out of plastic. And so single-use plastic is a huge deal. It's a huge alternative use for fossil fuels because that's all made out of petroleum products. And so we have to cut that back. I mean, we really have to cut it back. I mean, I thought this morning as I was pouring this, you know, I took a disposable can and I opened it and I poured it into a single-use plastic cup. And I thought, what am I doing? But I'd already done it before I stopped myself. But you know, it's like, how long will it take this cup to actually disintegrate into the earth? Probably hundreds, if not thousands of years. You know, it's crazy. But
Sometimes I go to the store and I forget to walk in my bag.
yeah, I know.
I'm not gonna get a extra, you know, I have to pay for it. And then people are behind me and the guy wasn't, I have to pay for it.
Yeah, so these are the kind of, this is just one of the very tiny lifestyle things. You know, it's like coming here today. You know, I am fortunate to have a place to park a car, and I have a car and I drive back and forth to New Jersey, or when I don't take the bus over there. But you know, with the rain today, it would be very tempting for me to say, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to worry about getting off at the end of the train and walking that 7 minutes in the rain, and I could pull the car up to just by the church. You know, those are some of the kinds of things that we're talking about. Yes. Yes.
Have you all thought about, you know, different approaches to dealing with the issue of, you know, investment strategies? I mean, with the units and the point the sister made with the pension funds, we've gotten a lot of headway in New York City and New York State and California with CalPERS. And I know the Presbyterian's done divestments before. We realize we have a very crazy financial market, but are you all looking at that and how to revisit it come the time that we go to Salt Lake City?
Yeah, it's like I said, this is, we put this mechanism in place for divestment back in the 80s related to South Africa. And because of the way it was set up at the time, they did not have an emphasis on a categorical divestment. Now, we've done categorical divestment, and by say categorical, I mean we don't put money in any companies that produce alcohol. We don't put in money in any companies that produce tobacco. So why couldn't we quite simply say we're not going to put any money in companies that produce fossil fuels? You know, this is the thing. Now, granted, we're hypocrites, right? We all use fossil fuels, and you know, we turn on that gas burner if we've got a gas stove. We, you know, put it in our car. If, you know, we need to put it in our car. It's a process, though. We have to start somewhere. We have to take a moral stand, and we're working on that. Yeah, and hopefully I'll be bringing to Jeff, hopefully soon, an overture framework that maybe can come to the presbytery around this topic. And any of y'all who are interested in this can, you know, Jeff can be in touch with you about it.
Presbytery meets in December.
The Presbytery meets in December, yeah. So, yeah, we have to get these overtures out to the presbyteries to get something going. Anything else? So we got like 3 minutes.
We could clap for 3 minutes.
What's that?
We could clap for 3
You can clap for 3 minutes. Do you have any more questions? I mean, I can talk. I can fill up that time with other ideas and other thoughts, but I just wanted to give that time to you for questions if you had them.
I wonder if since you wrote one of those overtures to the General Assembly, maybe do you have more that you would like to say about that one?
The one that came before the last General Assembly, everything in it got absorbed into these other ones that were passed.
Okay.
The only thing that didn't get absorbed, the reason it didn't pass by itself was because it was calling for a categorical divestment from fossil fuels. And the MRTI, the Mission Responsibility Through Investment, people made a strong stand and just said, and the committee accepted it. Now, that committee on any environmental issues at the assembly, they could have decided they weren't going to accept it, but they did accept it. So,
I have another question.
oh, good.
It has to do with what you started out talking about. Your first point was that climate change doesn't affect everybody equally, that it has a greater effect on people that are already suffering and at the bottom of worse neighborhoods and whatever. Our sister talked about working on this through the union, but I find in my work with Hispanic churches that it takes, I haven't been successful, let me put it that way, in making people realize that this is something that affects them personally and that they should advocate for it. Because, and I don't know why, maybe because it's complicated or...
Yeah, I think that is a good place to stop. We have to keep working on our own churches, our own families around this topic. Thank you all for your attention and your participation today. Appreciate it.